One morning in October 1593, a soldier appeared in the Plaza Mayor of Mexico City, wearing the wrong uniform, carrying the wrong weapon, and claiming to have been standing somewhere else entirely, 8,000 miles away, just moments before. That soldier, in the version of the story recorded by folklorist Thomas Allibone Janvier in 1908, was named Gil Perez, and the place he said he had come from was Manila in the Philippines, which was, by the sailing routes of the Spanish Empire, roughly 2 years of ocean crossing away from where he was now standing. The authorities in Mexico City had questions, and Perez, as far as anyone could tell, had no answers that made any sense, only the insistence that the thing had happened. But to understand why this story refused to die for over 3 centuries, and why it was still being passed between neighbors and priests and merchants in Mexico City, more than 300 years after it supposedly occurred, you have to understand exactly where Perez claimed to have been standing, and what he said had happened there just before the world moved without him. The Spanish Empire, in the late 16th century, was an operation of staggering geographic ambition. Manila had been established as the capital of the Philippines only since 1571, barely 2 decades before the events of this story. It was the far western anchor of a trading empire that ran east across the Pacific to Acapulco, overland through Mexico, and onward across the Atlantic to Spain. The Manila Galleon route, the trade artery connecting Manila to Acapulco, was one of the most remote and dangerous ocean crossings in the world. Ships took months, news took longer. An event in Manila might not be confirmed in Mexico City for the better part of a year, sometimes more, depending on winds, weather, and whether a ship made it at all. This matters because the thing Gil Perez claimed to have witnessed in Manila, right before his inexplicable arrival in Mexico City, was not a small thing. He said the governor of the Philippines, Gomez Perez Dasmariñas, had just been assassinated. The Mexican authorities had no way to verify this. They had no record of the killing. No ship had arrived with the news. Dasmariñas was, as far as anyone in Mexico City knew, still very much alive and governing the Philippines from Manila. So when a confused soldier appeared in their Plaza Mayor claiming that the governor was dead, and claiming he had just been in Manila, the reasonable conclusion, the only available conclusion, was that he was either lying or unwell. He was taken into custody, and then they waited. Months passed, and then a ship arrived from the Philippines, having crossed the Pacific with news from Manila. Gomez Perez Dasmariñas had been assassinated. The passengers confirmed it. The timeline matched what Perez had described. The killing had happened. And Gil Perez, standing in Mexico City weeks or months before any ship could possibly have carried the news, had known about it. Here's where the story becomes genuinely strange to sit with, not just because of the teleportation, if that's even the word for what the legend describes, but because the corroboration is what makes the account structurally different from a straightforward hallucination or a fabricated alibi. A man who invents a story to avoid punishment doesn't typically invent a story that includes the secret death of a colonial governor, which anyone could verify as false as soon as the next ship arrived. The corroboration, when it came, was not something Perez could have controlled. The assassination of Gomez Perez Dasmariñas is itself historical fact. He was killed by Chinese oarsmen during a military expedition in October 1593. The same month, the legend places Perez in Mexico City. That part of the story is not in dispute. What is in dispute is everything else. The legend, as it circulated in Mexico City over the following centuries, acquired the texture of folklore, retold, smoothed, passed through generations until Thomas Allibone Janvier in 1908 recorded it and gave the soldier a name. Janvier described the story as, in his words, current among all classes of the population of the city of Mexico. Not a fringe account, not a curiosity confined to the educated or the superstitious. Something that had become, over 300 years, simply part of the city's inherited memory. By the 20th century, paranormal investigators had taken an interest. The explanations offered ranged from teleportation, the idea that a human being had somehow moved instantaneously across 8,000 miles of ocean, to alien abduction, in which outside forces were responsible for the displacement. Neither explanation comes with evidence. Neither was available to the people in 1593 who had to decide what to do with Gil Perez. What happened to him after the corroboration arrived is not recorded. Whether the original account was written down at the time by a colonial official, a church recorder, anyone with ink and paper who was present, has never been established. The earliest known written version of the story is from 1908, 315 years after the morning in the Plaza Mayor. The death of Gomez Perez das Marinas is documented. The date is documented. The Plaza Mayor exists. It's now called the Zocalo, still the central square of Mexico City. Gil Perez, the soldier who appeared there claiming to have just left Manila, exists only in the story that kept being told about him.